Hello, welcome to the workshop. We recently received the shocking news that my brother-in-law's dog Tini became extremely ill very quickly, and sadly she's passed away. It's come as a great shock to everybody in the family. She was loved by everybody. You will have seen her in a few of our recent videos, and she was always running in and out of the workshop trying to see what we're up to. Your pets become a big part of your family. They're like your children, and when they have to go, it's extremely sad. So I think as a fitting tribute, I'm going to make a memorial box with which my brother can keep her ashes in. I'm also going to use this video as a tribute, and I'm going to showcase some of the videos and photographs that we've collected over the years that she's been with us. Thank you. For the main body of the box, we've been out and picked up this solid oak floorboard. It's tongue and groove. So what we're going to do is we're just going to run the board through the saw and take off the tongue. We'll set the table saw up just to rip one side of the groove off to create a rebate that will accept the lay-in top. Right, we're ready to cut the miters on the box sides. I've got the little 45-degree miter sled on the table saw, and then what I've done already is from my cut line I've put two pencil marks on the board here, one to indicate the short sides of the box and one to indicate the long sides of the box. So when I cut my miters, I'm obviously going to cut two pieces to this mark and two pieces to this mark. We've set up the assembly table. If you want to see the video for this build, I'll put a link up here, and I'll also put a link in the description below. I've got the pieces cut now for the box. We've mitered all of the corners, and I've also got them numbered 1 to 4 because the grain pattern follows right the way through this board, so I want to make sure I keep that. And how we're going to glue these together is that I'm going to use this straight edge to make sure that the bottom of the box is perfectly level. And then what we're going to use, I'm not going to use clamps, but I'm going to put tape on these joints, lay them flat, butt them together, tape the joint, flip the whole thing over, put glue in the miters, and then when I wrap it together, just the pressure of the tape alone will be good enough to hold those joints nice and tight. Okay, and then simply a case of just rolling this up. And the tape should be enough to just hold those joints together while they set. We're going to cut some splines into our box, and what we've got set up here, this is our spline jig that we've made. It's just simply a couple of pieces of plywood screwed together that ride over the fence on the table saw, and then there's two blocks which are screwed to this face panel at a 45-degree angle. So we slide that over the fence on the saw, place our box into the jig, and then what we'll do is we'll run it through the saw and it will cut a spline in this mitered joint. I've just raised the blade up so it's just shy of cutting through. I don't want it to go right the way through into the box, so it's just shy of that. And then what I'll do is I'll adjust the fence to where I want the splines cut, and then we can run all four sides. Make another adjustment with the fence and run the other four sides. We've cut some triangles of the hardwood, the same hardwood that we're using to make the plinth out of, so it gives us the same colour. And then these little triangles we're going to glue into the splines in the box. We'll leave them to set now until the glue's gone off, then we'll come back and trim them off and then sand it all flush. The splines have been glued into the box now and the glue's had time to cure. I'm just going to cut these off with a flush trimming saw. I've got my little Japanese dovetail saw. I've stuck some pieces of tape on the edge of this saw just so I've got no worries about it damaging the side of the box, and I'm just going to trim these off. And then what we can do then is I'll remove all the masking tape and we can sand these nice and flush. We've removed the masking tape, now we've cut the splines off roughly. They're protruding just a little bit, so I'm now just going to take it over to the belt sander and just sand these completely flush.
Tini, you're a bloody star, you are, aren't you, eh? You think you're a star.
We're going to use this piece of darker hardwood to create a plinth around the bottom of the box. So first of all we're just going to rip it into 4 equal pieces and then we'll run it through the thicknesser. What we've got set up in the router is a chamfering bit. I've just got a small portion of it showing above the table, and then we're just going to put a slight chamfer on the plinth that goes around the base of the box. I've adjusted the table saw so that the blade is 20mm above the table and also 20mm to the outside of the blade away from the fence. And then I'm going to run the bottom plinth pieces through the table saw. That'll give me a 20 by 20 rebate, and that's what I'm going to sit the side panels into. To help me cut these miters on these bottom plinth pieces, what I've got a bit of sacrificial wood in the saw here. That's going to help prevent any chip out on the underside of these pieces, because that's going to be seen on the top edge of the plinth. I've got the piece clamped with the miter saw clamp, and I'm just making sure that the piece is perfectly vertical before I make the cut. To make sure I get these miters perfectly nice and snug on the corners, first thing I do is number each of these bottom faces, 1, 2, 3 and 4. And when I start cutting these miters, I've marked all my pieces as well with a bottom face, so I know that's the face that I'm going to put up first. I get this miter so it's nice on this corner. I offer another piece up to it, make sure they're nice and snug. When I know that corner's nice and snug, then what I can do is come in here, underneath here, and run a little pencil mark down this edge. And then this is where I know this miter's got to start. And what I'll do is I'll creep up on this, I'll make a cut, test fit it, nibble a little bit off, test fit it, and I'll just keep creeping up on that mark until that one's nice and snug as well. Every time I offer it back with another piece here, so I know this joint's nice and tight. I then put another piece into this joint, check it, nibble a piece off, check it, and keep nibbling away until that joint's nice and tight as well. We've cut all the miters for the plinth, and I've just dry fitted this together just to check that they're all nice and snug. I haven't glued or pinned them yet. I'm hoping to spray the varnish on and get at least 3 to 4 coats on it with sanding in between to give it a really nice high gloss finish. Glue's had time to set up, so we're just going to remove the wedges. There we go, my cling film has obviously worked, stopped it sticking to the jig. And there's our glued up panel. Now what we're going to do is run this through the thicknesser. These sacrificial bits of wood will prevent any snipe on the end of the boards, and then I can use the maximum amount of this board, and eventually I'll cut them off, cut the board to length, and this centrepiece is what we'll actually use for our box. We've run this glued up board through the thicknesser now, just to clean off any glue residue and to get it down to the right thickness. And now all I'm going to do is run it through the table saw and rip off these edges and bring the board to the right width. Just put the first coat of varnish on the urn, and you can see now how it makes those splines pop out, that different dark hardwood against the oak. This is going to bring the grain up obviously a little bit, so what we'll do is we'll flatten this back with some really fine sandpaper, and then we'll give it another coat. And I'll probably do 3 or 4 coats on this just to get it to a really nice mirror finish. I've just given the box another light sanding just to get rid of any of the grain that was brought up from the first coat of varnish. Now what I want to do with one of these tack cloths, I'm just going to wipe over just to get any of the dust off before we give it a second coat of varnish. Now it's time to glue the top in. Generously glue right in this corner. And drop the top in. We've got about 3 coats of varnish on the box now, and you can see it's starting to get that lovely sort of mirror glass shine to it. I think we'll just do 1 more coat on this and that'll be it. We've had this brushed stainless steel plaque engraved with Tini's name on, and I'm now just going to mark out the locations of the screw holes on the front of the box. Just going to cover it with tape just to protect the surface, and it also gives me something I can rule my pencil lines on. I've got to take into account the fact that the portion of this box, 13mm of it, is actually sitting inside the base plinth. So 143, so actually 130mm will be on show. Half of that obviously is 65. Just before the final coat, I'm just going to give it a really light sanding with about an 800 grit sandpaper. It's just to take any little fine imperfections off that surface, and then come back with a tack cloth and just remove any of the dust before we put the final coat of varnish on. With any kind of spraying, I always find it's best to put a thin coat on. Keep the spray can an even distance away from the object that you're spraying. Use even strokes continuously across the piece, and apply the finish in small layers and build it up gradually. Don't put too much on at once, because then you'll start to get runs and drips. You can always add more layers, but it's very difficult to deal with drips once you've got too much coating on it. That's the last coat of varnish applied to both the box and the plinth. It just remains now, obviously we're going to put Tini's ashes in the box, and I'm going to glue the bottom to the box so the box is sealed permanently.